right there. An individual standing there. Again, I am just amazed at internet sleuths, as I was like, wow, that is very strange. That person appears to be calmly talking into their phone. It's like a circus around them. What's he doing? Who's he speaking to? Then, just a couple of minutes afterward, that same individual appears alongside another individual, and he moves Charlie's chair. Like, that's a crime scene. That's not good. And he moves it because he wants to stand on it as he takes down the cameras, or the camera rather, that is just above Charlie's head. That's the camera that I'm talking about on the right-hand side. That's a camera that I'm referring to, and we are going to now take a look. You can see, slowed down here, he pulls out the chair, he stands on it, and yes, that would be a big no-no for a crime scene. You don't move anything. He takes down the camera that is directly above where Charlie was sitting.
In the chaotic aftermath of a public figure being shot, panic rippled through the crowd. People screamed, others ducked for cover, and first responders rushed in to save lives. But not everyone reacted the way you might expect. Two men stood out. They didn't flee. They didn't join the rush to help the injured. Instead, they moved with unusual calm. One of them stood on the rocks, phone pressed firmly to his ear. The other dragged over a chair, climbed it, and fixed his attention on something almost invisible to the shaken crowd. A security camera. Within minutes, what should have been an ordinary piece of evidence, the camera mounted above the very spot where Charlie Kirk fell, was gone. Even more shocking, witnesses claim they saw the men carefully remove its memory card before vanishing from sight. That short clip went viral. Millions replayed it frame by frame, asking the same haunting question, why? Why in the middle of chaos would someone calmly dismantle a camera overlooking a crime scene? What was on that footage? And who were these men bold enough to do it in broad daylight, with the whole world watching? The internet gave it a name, Cameragate. Tonight we break down the mystery behind that viral moment. We'll retrace the steps of the men in the footage, explore the theories raised online, uncover how investigators tracked them down, and reveal the explanation that later came to light. But the question remains, was this a panicked mistake or a deliberate act to hide the truth? Before we dive in, make sure to like this video, share it with others following the case, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what you think about Cameragate. Because by the end of this video, you'll need to decide, was this simply chaos or a cover-up? On the day of the incident, Charlie Kirk was appearing at a public event. The atmosphere was charged but ordinary. Supporters gathered, conversations buzzed, and for most it was another day of political life. Then, in one split second, everything changed. The sound that no one ever expects to hear echoed through the venue. Panic surged. People ducked behind chairs, some sprinted for the exits, others froze, caught between fear and confusion. Emergency personnel rushed forward, their training guiding them into the storm of chaos. In the first few minutes, every movement was crucial. The crowd's safety, the victim's survival, and the integrity of the crime scene all hung in the balance. Yet amid that swirl of panic and urgency, something strange unfolded, something so out of sync with the moment that it would later dominate headlines and ignite online theories. While most were focused on the injured, two men turned their attention elsewhere. Eyewitnesses noticed one of them pulling a chair away from the scattering crowd and positioning it beneath a mounted security camera. He climbed the chair with a purposeful calm that stood in sharp contrast to the fear around him. The second man, standing on nearby rocks with a phone pressed firmly to his ear, kept watch. He didn't flinch, didn't dart his eyes nervously. He seemed steady, almost methodical. Together, the pair drew little notice at first. After all, in the chaos, not everyone is watching the fine details of what others are doing. But one camera phone did capture them, and that short clip became the centerpiece of a new mystery. In the footage, you can clearly see the man on the chair reach up and tamper with the mounted security camera. A few seconds later, the device is pulled down, removed from its bracket, and handled with what looks like surprising precision. Then, as if completing a rehearsed action, the men appear to remove the camera's memory card, small, almost invisible to the crowd, but crucial for investigators. Within seconds, they step down, blend back into the commotion, and walk away. The video is only a minute long, but its implications are enormous. Here, at the very scene of a national tragedy, was an act that looked less like panic and more like purpose. Almost instantly, the internet noticed. Viewers asked, who are these men? Why would they dismantle a camera? What did they not want the world to see? The viral clip spread with captions and theories. Some called it a clear act of obstruction. Others argued it might have been a misguided attempt to secure sensitive footage before it could be misused. But one thing was certain: this wasn't normal behavior in the middle of such chaos. And so the term was born, Cameragate, a scandal not about the crime itself but about the footage that might have revealed more about it. The anomaly was simple yet devastating. In the minutes when evidence was most critical, one piece of it disappeared. And for many, that raised more questions than answers. Who gave these men the authority to do this? Were they protecting evidence or destroying it? And if the footage showed something vital, would the public ever know? In this story, the crime itself was only the beginning. Cameragate had become the internet's obsession because sometimes the real mystery begins after the event itself. When a piece of footage goes viral in the middle of a national tragedy, it takes on a life of its own. That's exactly what happened here. What began as one shaky cell phone clip quickly grew into the internet's favorite detective case. People across platforms began pausing, rewinding, zooming in frame by frame. What they discovered would only deepen the mystery. Let's walk through the sequence as it unfolded. First, we see the crowd. The atmosphere is chaotic. People are shouting, trying to help, trying to flee, trying to make sense of what just happened. Amid the confusion, the camera pans and locks onto something unusual. A man dragging a chair across the ground away from the cluster of onlookers. At first glance, it seems meaningless. A chair in a sea of overturned objects. But then he positions it directly beneath one of the mounted security cameras. He steadies the chair, plants his feet, and climbs. There is no hesitation. His movements are deliberate. From here, the footage shows him reaching up. His hands fumble for only a moment before finding the bracket that secures the camera to the wall. Then, with one firm motion, he detaches it. This is where the clip slows down, both literally, as internet sleuths slowed the video for analysis, and figuratively, as viewers realized the significance. The camera wasn't just hardware, it was the silent witness to everything that had just unfolded. Now we see the man lower the device carefully into his hands. He doesn't toss it aside or drop it in panic. Instead, he turns it, almost like he knows exactly what he's looking for. Just a few seconds later, something small and nearly invisible comes free. The memory card, that tiny piece of plastic no bigger than a thumbnail, contained the footage everyone wanted answers from. In that moment, the questions multiplied. Why was this the priority? Why not help the injured, direct traffic, or wait for law enforcement? Instead, in a crime scene still unfolding, this man and his companion focused on removing a camera. And speaking of the companion, he plays an equally curious role. In the footage, we see him standing several feet away, perched on a cluster of rocks, phone pressed to his ear. He doesn't look nervous. He doesn't scan the crowd. His posture is casual, almost relaxed. Internet investigators pointed out that he never once takes his eyes off the man with the chair. Some speculated he was keeping watch. Others wondered if he was on the phone with someone giving instructions. The calmness of both men is striking. At a time when dozens of people were panicking, their focus was razor sharp. Once the SD card is removed, the man hops down from the chair. Together they walk off casually. No rush, no attempt to hide what they've just done. That's it. A 1-minute clip, but it launched 1,000 theories. Online reaction was swift. On TikTok, creators posted frame-by-frame breakdowns. Some added voiceovers pointing out the suspicious timing, the calm demeanor, and the almost surgical precision of the removal. On YouTube, longer-form videos analyzed the camera model, the size of the card, and whether it could have contained crucial footage of the shooting. Reddit threads exploded with speculation, offering theories ranging from cover-ups to simple panic-driven mistakes. The most common theories fell into two camps. Theory 1, evidence protection. Supporters of this idea argued that the men were trying to protect sensitive material from being leaked, stolen, or misused. In a world where graphic footage can spread online within seconds, perhaps they thought securing the memory card was a way to protect the victim's dignity and shield the public from raw imagery. Theory 2, cover-up. Critics saw it differently. They argued that removing the camera in the middle of a chaotic crime scene looked more like a calculated attempt to destroy evidence. Why else would someone act with such purpose? And why target that specific camera positioned directly above the victim's location, unless it had recorded something someone didn't want the world to see? Both theories found passionate advocates online, and with every share, every repost, every hashtag, the mystery grew. Cameragate wasn't just about a missing memory card anymore. It became a symbol of distrust in institutions, in narratives, in the way evidence is handled when the stakes are highest. The timing only fueled suspicion. The removal didn't happen hours later, after law enforcement secured the area. It happened minutes after the incident, while victims were still receiving aid, while witnesses were still reeling. For many viewers, that suggested foreknowledge, intent, or at the very least, shocking disregard for procedure. And this is where the case took a sharp turn. Internet detectives could speculate endlessly, but sooner or later, real investigators or journalists would have to put names to faces. Who were these men? Who authorized their actions? And what exactly did they do with the missing footage? The search for answers would lead directly into the next phase of the Cameragate mystery: identification, contact, and explanation. Up until this point, Cameragate was the internet's mystery to solve. Theories were everywhere, but facts were scarce. That changed when professional investigators and a few well-connected commentators stepped into the picture. The turning point came when one of the most widely shared clips reached the eyes of Candace Owens, a close associate of Charlie Kirk and a prominent voice in conservative media. She had been following the case closely, and like everyone else, she was struck by the bizarre footage. But for her, the clip wasn't just of strangers. Something about the man's face, his movements, even his posture, looked familiar. Within hours, Owens publicly stated that she recognized him. According to her, the man wasn't some random bystander. He was part of the organizational staff, connected to Turning Point USA, the very organization Charlie Kirk had founded. That revelation changed everything. Suddenly, Cameragate wasn't just an internet puzzle. It was a real-world scandal that touched the inner circle of the victim himself. If Owens was correct, the man dismantling the camera wasn't acting alone. He was acting as part of a team. And if that was true, the question of why became more pressing than ever. Owens didn't stop at recognition. In her recounting, she described obtaining the individual's phone number. That detail electrified her audience. The mystery figure from the viral video now had a name, a face, and a direct line. For the first time, someone had the chance to cut through speculation and ask the one question that mattered: why did you take down that camera? And so she did. Owens says she placed the call herself. On the other end of the line was not a nervous conspirator, not someone hiding in the shadows, but an employee who sounded shaken and defensive. According to her account, his explanation went like this: in the chaos of the shooting, he feared for his family's safety. The camera above the scene, he claimed, might have recorded not only the incident, but also individuals in the crowd, including children. He believed that if the footage leaked online, it could cause harm, either by exposing the identities of minors present, or by fueling further unrest. His immediate instinct, he said, was to secure the memory card before it could fall into the wrong hands. He denied any intention of destroying evidence. Instead, he framed his actions as protective, a misguided but well-meaning attempt to shield the community. It's a remarkable defense. On one level, it humanizes the act. We've all seen how quickly sensitive footage can spread online, often stripped of context and weaponized for clicks. His explanation tapped into that fear. Perhaps in a moment of panic, he thought he was preventing the worst. But critics weren't convinced. The biggest problem with his story was timing. If his motive was truly protection, why act before police secured the area? Why not hand the memory card directly to law enforcement? Why not even say what he was doing instead of slipping away quietly? The calm demeanor captured on video also raised doubts. Viewers pointed out that his movements didn't look like panic. They looked methodical, almost rehearsed. And his companion's behavior, the man on the rocks, phone pressed to his ear, added another layer of suspicion. If they were simply trying to protect sensitive material, why did it feel like coordination? Then came the institutional question: did anyone in leadership know this was happening? If this employee was acting under orders, the implications were serious. It would mean that people close to the organization prioritized controlling footage over preserving the crime scene. If, however, he acted on his own, it raised questions about oversight. How could someone take such drastic action without clearance? Candace Owens herself acknowledged these contradictions. She didn't endorse his explanation outright. Instead, she put the facts in front of her audience and asked them to decide: was this an emotional response in a time of fear, or was it something darker? In the days that followed, mainstream outlets cautiously reported on the Cameragate footage, often citing Owens's identification but avoiding firm conclusions. Law enforcement confirmed they were aware of the incident and were reviewing whether the removal of the camera and memory card violated any laws. After all, tampering with a crime scene, even with good intentions, can carry serious consequences. At this point, the narrative had two competing versions. The official explanation: a frightened employee acted out of instinct, hoping to protect families and prevent graphic footage from spreading. The public suspicion: two men calmly and deliberately tampered with a crime scene, possibly to erase evidence that could have revealed uncomfortable truths. The divide was sharp. On social media, each new detail fueled hours of debate. Some argued that mistakes happen in crises, that anyone could act irrationally when adrenaline spikes. Others maintained that the video showed no irrationality at all, just focus and intent. One thing, however, was undeniable: the Cameragate clip had changed the conversation around the case. It wasn't just about the crime anymore. It was about trust. Trust in the organizations connected to the victim, trust in the people handling evidence, and trust in whether the full truth would ever come to light. And as the story moved forward, one thing became clear. Even with explanations on the table, the questions weren't going away. Even after the man at the center of Cameragate gave his explanation, the debate was far from over. In fact, the release of his side of the story only deepened the divide. On the surface, his defense seemed straightforward. He claimed he acted out of fear and instinct, removing the camera to protect sensitive material from being misused. But when investigators, journalists, and the public analyzed his words against the footage, cracks began to appear. Let's start with the case for his explanation. In moments of crisis, people do irrational things. Panic rewires the brain, pushing us towards snap decisions that don't always make sense in hindsight. If this employee genuinely believed the footage might endanger children, expose attendees, or fuel more unrest, his decision, though ill-advised, could be seen as a protective instinct. Supporters of this view argued that the very chaos of the shooting supports his claim. Sirens blaring, people screaming, the uncertainty of whether the danger was over. Amid that environment, anyone could make a questionable judgment call. Perhaps he thought he was helping. Perhaps his calm movements were less about calculation and more about shock. Some even noted that in certain professions, training under pressure leads people to act with composure even when terrified. But then there's the case against him. From the very beginning, internet sleuths and commentators noticed that his actions did not resemble panic. They resembled procedure, moving the chair, climbing with purpose, removing not the whole camera, but specifically the memory card, the very piece of hardware containing the most critical evidence. That level of precision suggested intent. And here lies the central contradiction. If he truly wanted to protect the footage, why not deliver it directly to law enforcement? Why not make a public statement in the moment? Why disappear quietly, letting the internet draw its own conclusions? For many, the lack of transparency was damning. Silence can sometimes say more than words. The larger problem is what this moment symbolized. Cameragate became more than a question about one man's decision. It became a test of trust. If those close to the victim's circle were willing to tamper with evidence, even for supposed protective reasons, what else might be hidden? Law enforcement faced its own challenges. While officials acknowledged awareness of the footage and promised to review the matter, no immediate public charges were brought. The ambiguity left a vacuum, and in that vacuum, speculation thrived. For the Robinson family, the accused shooter's parents, Cameragate created another layer of complexity. They were already grappling with the unbearable reality of their son's alleged actions. Now the case was clouded by whispers of possible cover-ups, hidden footage, and organizational politics. Every revelation added pressure, not only in the courts but in the court of public opinion. Meanwhile, the internet carried on its trial by video. TikTok edits, YouTube breakdowns, and Twitter threads dissected every frame. Some creators slowed the footage down to highlight the exact moment the memory card was pocketed. Others compared it to past incidents where evidence was mishandled or removed. The viral nature of Cameragate made it one of the most scrutinized clips in recent memory. And yet the card itself, the missing piece, remains an enigma. What exactly was on it? Did it capture the suspect's face, his movements, or other critical details? Or was it just another angle of chaos, indistinguishable from dozens of cell phone videos already online? Without answers, theories multiply. The aftermath left three key lingering questions. Intent: was the employee acting independently, driven by fear and a misguided sense of protection, or was he carrying out instructions? Impact: did the removal of the memory card erase potentially crucial evidence that could have shaped the investigation? Accountability: even if the act was well-intentioned, should there be consequences for tampering with a crime scene? These are not small questions. They cut to the heart of justice and transparency. In the weeks that followed, Cameragate cast a long shadow over every update in the case. Press conferences about the suspect inevitably drew questions about the missing footage. Journalists, commentators, and community members alike demanded clarity. And yet clarity never fully arrived. Instead, Cameragate lingered as an unresolved subplot in a larger tragedy, fueling mistrust, sparking debate, and reminding us how, in the digital age, even the smallest detail caught on camera can shift the narrative of an entire case. Cameragate remains one of the most unsettling threads in the Charlie Kirk shooting. We know the sequence of events: a chaotic attack, a community in shock, and two men who, in the middle of the confusion, calmly dismantled a security camera. We know the internet noticed. We know one of those men was identified and offered an explanation. And we know that explanation has left more questions than answers. At its core, Cameragate forces us to confront a troubling dilemma. Were these simply misguided actions by a frightened employee, trying to protect sensitive footage in a moment of crisis? Or was this something more deliberate, a calculated attempt to control the narrative and remove key evidence from the public eye? The footage is clear. The actions are undeniable. But the truth remains just out of frame. And so the mystery lingers, unresolved, raising deeper concerns about trust, accountability, and the lengths people will go to protect or obscure the record of what really happened. As we close, the final question is yours to answer. What do you believe really happened in Cameragate? Let us know your theories in the comments below. And don't forget to tell us where in the world you're watching from. If you found this deep dive informative, make sure to like this video, share it with others who follow true crime and investigative stories, and subscribe for more. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next investigation.